2 of the World Championship, the San-Marino Grand-Prix at Imola, just down the road from the Modena home of Ferrari. From near and far, they've come in their thousands to flaunt the Ferrari red, wave their Ferrari flags, cheer their Ferrari heroes, and will them to another win for the prancing horse. But it's not going to be easy for the men from Maranello at Imola. McLaren, stung by their defeat in Brazil, were here for 8 days before the race, testing revised Honda engine configurations, different brakes and other modifications, and it's worked. Mansell may lead the Drivers' Championship ahead of Prost, Gugelmin, Herbert, Warwick and Nannini, and Ferrari may lead McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, but at the end of practice it was the same old story, with McLaren up front on the grid. In pole position, it's world champion Ayrton Senna, last year's winner, starting there for the 31st time. Alain Prost, already a 2 times winner here at Imola and second last year. Nigel Mansell, a brilliant winner of his first Grand Prix for Ferrari in Brazil. Third on the grid, but 1.5 seconds slower than Senna. Riccardo Patrese, who led the Brazilian Grand Prix in his Williams Renault, starts 4th.
Peut-être la victoire de Ferrari il y a 4 semaines à Rio, mais surtout d'accompagner cette deuxième manche du championnat du monde des conducteurs de Formule 1, le Grand Prix de Saint-Marin qui traditionnellement se dispute maintenant sur ce circuit de Imola au cœur de l'Émilie-Romagne à une trentaine de kilomètres de Bologne. Imola où une foule sans doute record est accourue pour célébrer Ferrari, on l'a dit, et pour vibrer aux exploits des 26 qualifiés de cette épreuve. Une épreuve qui verra, vous l'avez dans l'image maintenant, une nouvelle fois Ayrton Senna au volant de sa
Ayrton Senna pole position heeft met zijn McLaren Honda. Het is weer een verhaal wat je ongeveer kan spiegelen aan verleden jaar. Senna en Prost beide op de eerste startrij. Maar toch gebeurt er meer. Er is meer competitie, er is meer concurrentie dan afgelopen seizoen toen er nog met turbowagens gereden werd. De turbo's, dat is over. En we zijn dus nu gearriveerd in een tijdperk waar er met 3,5 liter motoren gereden wordt. Lopend van V8 tot en met V12. Dit is Alain Prost. Tweede starttijd, een tijd van 1:26:23. En daarmee was hij 2 tienden langzamer dan Ayrton Senna. Gemiddelde snelheid werd gereden van 211 km per uur door Ayrton Senna. De snelste tijd was ongeveer een seconde sneller dan verleden jaar. Terwijl men toch oorspronkelijk dacht dat 3,5 liter normale motoren langzamer zouden zijn dan de turbo's. Maar het tegendeel is hier gebleken. Dit is Nigel Mansell's wagen, de Ferrari, met een derde tijd. Alleen Mansell zit wel zo'n 1,6 seconden langzamer dan Ayrton Senna. Het is in de race natuurlijk een ander verhaal. In de training wordt er tegenwoordig weer gebruik gemaakt van zogenaamde kwalificatiebanden. Er is ook weer een...
Where we join James Hunt and Murray Walker.
Good afternoon and welcome to a very sunlit Imola for the San-Marino Grand Prix. Well, to say that the atmosphere here is one of excitement and tension would be a masterpiece of understatement. Because, as you've just heard, Ayrton Senna in pole position ahead of Alain Prost are 1.5 seconds faster than Nigel Mansell, the victor in Rio, in his Ferrari, who has outpsyched his teammate Gerhard Berger, who you see there in Ferrari number 28, and who is in 5th position on the grid, with Riccardo Patrese between Mansell and Berger. Now, the big question here is, have McLaren and Honda, who were stung by their defeat in Brazil and who have spent 8 days here at Imola prior to the official practicing, developing modifications to the Honda engine, to the car's suspension, to the car's brakes and various other things, broken the domination that Ferrari had over them in the one race at Brazil? At the moment, it is looking like it. But practice is one thing and racing is another. Ferrari have their automatic gearbox. They have been working very hard on it since Brazil, and there are very definite improvements. That is Alessandro Nannini, incidentally, who is the top V8 powered driver on the grid. He is in 7th position, the Italian, in the Benetton Ford. And by the way, the new Benetton with its Ford engine is being tested all next week. So we'll hope to see that in Grand Prix racing very soon. That is 3 times world champion Nelson Piquet in the Lotus with its Judd V8 engine. And Piquet is in 8th position on the grid. But 9th, an incredible and very well-deserved 9th, is little Alex Caffey, the Italian, who actually had to pre-qualify. Some 13 drivers have to pre-qualify before they're even allowed to take part in the official practice, and of those 13, only 4 go forward. Well, Caffey not only got into practice, but he qualified 9th. There's another big surprise. Olivier Gouillard, the Frenchman, 3 seasons in Formula 3000. This is his first year in Formula 1. He's in the new Ligier after last year's rolling disaster, which failed to qualify for race after race. This one, which has been designed by a consortium of engineers, including the Brazilian Richard de Villa, is much, much better. And Gouillard was actually fastest on the straight in practice at 194 miles an hour in his 3.5-litre engined car. That's Pierluigi Martini, another big surprise, 11th on the grid, another ex-Formula 3000 driver. And all the umbrellas are up, and we've just seen in the case of the McLarens, aluminium foil being removed from the engine covers, the object of which was to deflect the sun's rays and help keep the fuel cool. And Ferrari, by the way, have been actually refrigerating their fuel. That's how important it is, because this race, which is over 61 laps, is going to be 191 miles long. The San Marino Grand Prix is notorious for its demands on fuel. For instance, Alain Prost won here a few years ago, only to be excluded because he had run out of fuel just over the line, and his car, when it was weighed, was 2 kilograms lower than the minimum permitted. And it's not only very tough on fuel, but it's very tough on tyres and brakes. Ferrari have been cooling their fuel to some minus 20 degrees, and that saved them, in effect given them a bonus of 5 litres. And as you look down there, you can see there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people here. They are all Ferrari fans, almost to a man, wearing their Ferrari red anoraks caps, waving the umbrellas. And if Mansell, who is already a demigod in Italy, does well here, and Berger, by the way, was fastest in Friday's wet qualifying practice, although he went off yesterday, but is okay, I'm glad to say. Do well, they will be able to ask for and get anything they want in Italy. That, in the centre of your screens now, is one of the distinctive features of this Imola circuit. It is the traguardo, the left and then the right chicane. Now you're looking down at the circuit from the helicopter as it makes its way up the Tamburello and then on to the Acqua Minerale, the Variante Alta. The lap record here, by the way, is held by Nelson Piquet in his Williams Honda at a speed of 127.151 miles an hour. And that is the Rivazza, double left-hander, which leads into the Variante Bassa, which they go through in 5th gear. And the high speed they'll be doing here after they've left the start and finish line and gone up towards the Tosa is over 190 miles an hour in the 3.5-litre normally aspirated engine cars. No turbos this year, of course. So tough on the cars, tough on the brakes, the tyres, fuel consumption, and of course very hard for the drivers.
Yes, indeed, and I think this is probably the highest fuel consumption of any of the European circuits, certainly. And 1 or 2 cars I've noticed on the grid cramming in the last few pints of fuel, topping up, which means that they're pretty marginal on being able to make the distance. Now,
as you look down on the grid, you see the 2 red and white McLarens with their Honda engines in the front row. The start is going to be absolutely vital here. We know that not only in practice but also in the warm-up this morning, where the cars are mostly nearly under race conditions with fuller tanks, if not full tanks, the McLarens were 1.5 seconds faster over a lap than the Ferraris. So if Senna and Prost can get a good start, and last year Prost had a terrible start, dragged when the lights changed to green and was right down in about 9th position at the end of the first lap, fought his way through to second at the end of the race, but by then, of course, Ayrton Senna had made the break and was well on his way to score his first win for McLaren. That was in 1988. So on the right of your screen, just slightly forward of Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna. Behind him is Nigel Mansell. Now they're going away for the final parade lap. Now they're going round the Tamburello. This is a long drag, and they'll go round that at 6th gear on the racing lap, that sweeping left-hander. They're making their way up towards the top right corner of your screen, which is the famous Tosa bend. They start in 2nd gear, come out of it at about 95 miles an hour, change up into 3rd, and then on their way up towards the Piratella. They're at the highest part of the circuit when they are there. You're looking at them now as the camera swings right, and you look uphill towards the Piratella, the left-hander. This is it. 4th gear in, 5th gear out, 155 miles an hour. Now you're about to see why Imola is so demanding on brakes, because they're plunging downhill in race conditions at about 150 to 155 miles an hour, lining themselves up to go through the left and then the right of the Acqua Minerale, which they take at about 105 miles an hour in 2nd and 3rd gears. They're out of it now, climbing again with the grandstands on their left, up towards the Variante Alta, which is right and left. That's where Berger, incidentally, went off in practice with no real damage. Now downhill again, down towards the Rivazza, a double left-hander, in 2nd gear, 95 miles an hour, up into 3rd, then up into 4th. That's the first part of the left-hander. Now they come out of that at about 150 miles an hour, up into 5th gear, keeping hard on the throttle, down to the Variante Bassa, sweeping right-hander, which leads into the Traguardo, another chicane. And that itself leads into the start and finish straight, and the assembly of the grid. And once again, Ayrton Senna, with all his experience, as they go through the Traguardo. Senna's got a lot of experience now of leading the field round. This is his 31st pole position. Only one man has scored more, and that's the late, great Jim Clark, who scored 33. Senna leading up, followed by Prost, who will be starting from slightly to the right in the 2nd row. Now watch Nigel Mansell. Remember that Mansell will be starting on the clutch, as will Berger behind him, but from then on their 7-speed gearboxes will be automatically controlled. The last runners, including Nakajima in the yellow Lotus, coming round in the background. Alio has gone into the pits. Philippe Alio in his Lola Lamborghini has gone into the pits. He had a lot of trouble in the warm-up. The San Marino Grand Prix is go. Senna leads, Prost 2nd, Mansell 3rd, Berger in 4th position, and Patrese. Now, already the 2 Ferraris are jostling with Patrese.
Very short red light then before we got to the green, and Mansell is having a look down the inside of Prost, got a wheel on the grass there, but a clean start. Everybody cleanly away. Senna, puff of smoke there as he locked his left front wheel going into the second gear left-hander. And away up the hill. And a glorious noise it is, hearing proper racing engines again after those turbos.
Yeah, and you see the McLarens are already pulling away, and there is Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari 640 V12 engine. Patrese is in 4th position, Berger is in 5th place, Thierry Boutsen is 6th, and off across the grass goes Maurizio Gugelmin in his march. But Senna and Prost have really got the hammer down. What they're trying to do now is build a cushion.
Yes, with that big long run down to the first corner, the power of the Honda engines was clearly adequate, but the two McLarens, the start that they particularly needed, and for a matter of interest, the start that we really didn't need, because their superiority in practice anyway was absolutely huge, and it looks now as if they really will be able to drive away from the others.
Well, there's a long way to go. Senna leads. Prost goes through in 2nd position, then there's a gap. It's Mansell 3rd, Patrese, Berger, Boutsen. Up now, round the left-hander, on towards the Tosa bend. You can see them streaming through. There's the Lotus. Derek Warwick immediately behind Senna, Prost. Now, Mansell has got a queue behind him, and Patrese, I think, is... Yes, Patrese trying to fight his way past the Ferrari, followed by Berger and Boutsen.
Yes, and Mansell forced to defend his line then and take the inside line into the corner, which, of course, protects the place, but doesn't help them chase McLarens, because that's a compromise to defend. Of course, you have to go a little bit slower. Patrese looking for a way past, and certainly the Williams Renault looks like a very good car indeed.
And this is really a case of the biter bit, because Patrese is famous for holding people up. Now he is trying to get past Nigel Mansell, and in the process is giving Senna there and Prost there an opportunity to pull away. Now, a lot of people have said, as in 3rd position Mansell, followed by Patrese, then it is Berger, then it is Boutsen. A lot of people said that Alain Prost there had lost some of his motivation last year, but he's well and truly got it back this year. That's proved by the fact that in the warm-up this morning he was fastest, and I think he's going to be really going for a 3rd victory at San Marino.
Yes, I would certainly subscribe to the theory that Prost, at least in the first half of last season, was not mentally prepared, and as one of the marshals, that's Capelli into the sand pit, and that's the end of his afternoon's work. But certainly I think Prost, up until the British Grand Prix last year, was not mentally prepared to do battle with Senna, but I think the shock of the criticism he got for pulling out of the British Grand Prix because he didn't like the conditions, and the criticism he got for that seemed to charge him up, and Prost's motivation is certainly 100% now.
Already we have 2 races within a race. Prost chasing Senna, and Prost is 2.5 seconds ahead of Mansell. Mansell in 3rd position ahead of Patrese, who is right behind the Ferrari, and there is Gerhard Berger on the... Cathy is 11th, Larini is in 12th position, and Johnny Herbert is up to... in this 61-lap race.
Yes, and already the 2 McLarens are lapping some 2 seconds a lap quicker than their pursuers. What will be interesting now is to see if Berger is quick enough on the straight once they come across the start-finish line, the long run now that they're about to start on, whether Berger has got the straight line speed to do anything about Patrese's Williams. Certainly the Renault engine looks pretty powerful. Although Ferrari's engine probably isn't quite as powerful. Oops, and big problems. That was something broken on the car for sure. Big crash by Berger. Without any doubt, it went straight on.
And, oh heavens above, this is dreadful. This is the... There are no words that can add to this appalling picture. The car off. And thank heavens there is a fire tender on the spot immediately. The drivers at least have pure air piped through to their helmets due to a special valve, and the fire is out. There is some relief. Now they must keep those fire extinguishers going.
Yes, the fire is out for the moment, but Berger must have been hurt in that because the car is the right way up, and if he hadn't been injured, I'm sure he would have hopped out. So this is very, very, very worrying moments.
This is the worst possible thing that you can have happen in a motor race. Cars have got so safe, conditions have got so safe, the organisation is so good that nowadays you don't expect them to be hurt. But bad news, the red flag is out. The San Marino Grand Prix is being stopped, has been stopped on the fourth lap. And here's a replay. You see the Ferrari going off there, onto the grass, into the wall.
Yes, and you see that in fact something broke on the car because it just went straight on. The car did not respond at all to Berger's turning the corner, and that was a very heavy impact. Remember, Nelson Piquet last year or the year before had a similar accident at the same corner. Piquet also had a failure on the car, and the car went straight on. A very heavy impact.
So there is a replay of the one thing that we never want to see again. In my position, there really is, as I've just said, nothing you can say. It's an appalling situation. The driver there in the cockpit, flames all around him, and you desperately hope for a fire tender to arrive quickly. And thank heavens it did just that.
Yes, they were pretty quick. But what we want to see, that is the live picture. We want to see Berger being taken out of the car and to see whether he's all right. We want to see that he is all right, of course. Well, they've obviously got him out of the car, and at least the rescue services seemed to get there pretty quickly, and they got that fire out pretty quickly.
Incidente estremamente spettacolare, la dinamica è simile a quella.
The medical services here at Imola, I'm delighted to say, are extremely good. There is a constant demand for medical services to be upgraded, and that's Berger's teammate Nigel Mansell, who obviously is going to be probably even more worried than the rest of us are, because, as James says, it looks as though something broke on Berger's car. I find it very hard to believe that Berger himself had made that sort of a mistake. He went off in practice, but nothing like as catastrophically fast as that.
They did. They had a gearbox casing split this morning in the warm-up, and of course that would create a suspension failure because all the rear suspension is hung onto the gearbox, and if they've had a repeat of that problem, that would certainly be a possible cause of that. There's no doubt at all in my mind that there was a car failure, because that's a flat-out corner. It's not even a problem for the drivers. They just simply steer around it, and quite obviously the car just never would turn the corner. It just went absolutely straight on, and you can see the marks as he hit the brakes. But of course, from 175 miles an hour or something like that he'd be doing at that point, once on the grass, it's just a very big impact.
Now, the drivers are, in fact, strapped into what is, in effect, a safety cell. They have 6 belts around them in various positions, over the shoulders, the waist, and the thighs. But the thing that must, I imagine, have caused the problem is the fire. When Piquet went off here in practice, not this year, when Piquet went off in practice, he went straight into the wall at equal speed, but there was no fire, and he got out of the car, and although he was bruised and shaken, he actually wanted to take part in the race. But well, what can one say at this stage of the race? As James has said, it is our view at the present moment that there must have been a component failure. But we're really in no more of a position to make a judgment than people sitting in their homes are, because we're looking at television pictures as well. We didn't see the actual accident, and even if we had, we wouldn't have been any the wiser really about the cause of it.
Yes, at the moment, of course, we have no news of Gerhard Berger. We can see that they're working around him, and we just hope and pray that he's all right. I think it's evident that he must have been injured, either that or trapped in the car in the accident, because he didn't immediately get out. Fortunately, they got the fire out very efficiently, and at least I think that he would have been in that fire for a sufficiently short time not to have suffered too much damage to his person, at least from the fire. What we can't possibly know is what injuries, if any, he received from the impact. We will, of course, keep alert and bring you news of him just as soon as we can possibly get hold of any.
And of course, an awful calm has descended on Imola. The spectators have Berger very much at heart. He is, with Nigel Mansell, their hero. Berger, of course, has won for Ferrari. He comes from Austria, has an impish sense of humour, a very charming mentality, and the Italians truly love him. And for this to happen to anybody, never mind to their man, is the worst possible thing that could happen.
Yes, and in fact, the Italians aren't the only people. He is a lovely, lovely man. He's got a great sense of fun. He brings a ready smile to the paddock wherever he goes, and we just hope and pray that he's not seriously hurt.
So there is Gerhard Berger. Now, it is not for me to attempt to make any sort of diagnosis. All I can see, as you can see, is at least he's on a stretcher. There is a drip that I saw being held up above him. So hopefully that is a good sign. The impact, of course, would have been absolutely colossal, but a lot of drivers have come out of accidents that were just as bad as that in terms of hitting something. A slight consolation is that it wasn't quite a head-on, it was at a slight angle, front first and back afterwards, which would have slightly reduced the impact. It would still have been absolutely colossal. But Berger out in that ambulance that you see, which will now make its slow way back, I would imagine, to the very excellent Circuit Hospital, which is here just right alongside the start and finish point, and there is a fully equipped operating theatre there. Are the very, very best medical facilities available here at Imola, and it's certainly not without interest that the Imola authorities have made a great point out of the fact that they've done everything they possibly can to ensure safety and to overcome driver problems like this, if there are any.
Okay, well, as we saw, Gerhard Berger going off the circuit, which was obviously a mechanical failure of some description. And of course, this is the great thing that drivers fear most of all, because to sit in these cars alone, you have to have extreme confidence in your own ability. And you always say, well, it'll never happen to me. But this is something that the drivers cannot foresee and cannot do anything about, and that's a mechanical failure. And it's probably claimed certainly more drivers than any driver error or anything else. It's one of the greatest hazards of motor racing. It's it's a great, and it's a shame. It's ironical that Gerhard Berger, being an Austrian, I suppose, and in a Ferrari, Niki Lauda was an Austrian, and he was in a Ferrari, had a similar crash, burst into flames. But the trouble, you know, well, not the trouble, but the modern cars now are so thin in the nose. I mean, we saw Eddie Cheever hop out of his car at Brazil and seemed to collapse through heat exhaustion. Well, I found out at a later date that that was partly caused by the fact that the blood circulation was cut off to his legs, and when he hopped out of the car in such a hurry, his legs were unable to support him. So these modern cars are so narrow at the front now that go into a front impact like that, you're really going to know about it. Full comment to, or commendable to the Italian fire marshals, who I believe were on the spot very, very quickly indeed. I was a little bit perturbed to see just a couple of handheld extinguishers initially, but they were very quick to get the proper hoses in there as well, and I think they did an excellent job in getting there quick smart. We can only hope now that Gerhard's okay, because as Murray and James said, he's a very likeable bloke, very cooperative, and of course an excellent Grand Prix driver, so I really hope that he's okay. Okay, we'll go for a break now and return shortly.
Il y a 2 ans, ici même à Imola, Nelson Piquet avait fait une sortie de route presque au même endroit, un peu plus loin, donc à une vitesse encore un peu plus élevée. Et il avait été interdit de départ par les médecins, par la faculté, et certainement à juste titre, mais il s'en était sorti parfaitement indemne. Les structures même du cockpit, qu'on appelle la cellule de survie du cockpit, sont extrêmement résistantes, extrêmement bien conçues. Et c'est surtout le feu qui était inquiétant. Alors l'ambulance termine son tour de piste pour venir maintenant s'immobiliser, je pense, auprès de l'hélicoptère. Peut-être Berger sera-t-il dans un premier temps examiné au petit centre hospitalier qui est ici. Le public applaudit peut-être, on n'a pas entendu l'annonce du speaker. Peut-être l'annonce sera-t-elle répétée en anglais et pourrons-nous l'entendre. Oui, alors on nous confirme que c'est bien à la suite de la perte de l'aileron avant que la Ferrari de Berger a perdu toute son adhérence. C'est le témoignage de Thierry Boutsen qui nous est communiqué par nos amis de la télévision belge. Témoignage de Thierry Boutsen qui a assisté, qui a vu de très près et qui a pu donner ses explications.
Well, we have news of Gerhard Berger, according to the television. He's to add that he spoke with the medical team, so he has lost consciousness. He is now in the medical centre, and let me just tell you that the rescue workers were on the scene of the accident within 12 seconds, and within 23 seconds they had the fire out.
Eh bien,
Of course, the car was carrying virtually a full fuel load.
le speaker de langue anglaise confirme l'impression qui était la nôtre sur la base des images et précise que Gerhard Berger est conscient qu'il n'a jamais perdu connaissance et que son état ne devrait pas inspirer trop d'inquiétude. Il précise aussi que les secours ont été sur place 12 secondes après l'immobilisation de la voiture et que le feu a été éteint après 23 secondes. Ce qui permet de souligner une nouvelle fois la nécessité absolue de l'entraînement et du professionnalisme des équipes de secours, comme ce fut le cas ici, dans cette terrible embardée. Et tandis que Gerhard Berger reçoit les soins nécessaires, je pense que la piste est en train d'être dégagée, la course reprendra. Et je présume, c'est un cas de règlement maintenant, je présume que c'est l'intégralité de la course qui devrait reprendre. On était au début du 4e tour. Peut-être que la course repartira avec les positions qui étaient celles au moment de l'arrêt. On attendra les informations à ce sujet.
Abbiamo preso adesso dal direttore Dino Ferrari, l'ingegnere Roberto Dosetto, che Berger parla tranquillamente, non ci sono ustioni, non sembra ci siano lesioni, anzi Berger si preoccupa con i medici che gli tolgano velocemente la tuta in presa di benzina. Insomma, sembra che la situazione di Gerhard Berger, il pilota della Ferrari, sia del tutto ottimale.
Eh bien, c'est incroyable. Cette nouvelle nous réjouit, le public l'applaudit. Le speaker a précisé que Berger parle tout à fait calmement, tout à fait normalement. Il semble ne souffrir d'aucune blessure particulière. Ce qui tient autant du miracle que de l'efficacité de ces cellules survie que sont devenues les cockpits des voitures de Formule 1. Mais parce que lorsque l'on voit les restes de la voiture, ce n'est pas la première fois, on se souvient, on l'a rappelé tout à l'heure. Regardez encore une fois le choc d'une violence inouïe, une vitesse que l'on peut sans aucun doute estimer à plus de 250 km/h, puisque au passage de la ligne, les voitures les plus rapides étaient chronométrées hier à 247 km/h. On passe encore un rapport supérieur après. Donc j'opterais plutôt pour un 280 km/h au moment de la sortie de route, et peut-être il n'a pas eu le temps de faire grand chose, peut-être simplement de modifier un tout petit peu la trajectoire pour ne pas heurter le mur de front. Mais au moment de l'impact, la voiture devait être lancée encore à 265-270 km/h. Alors les voitures, elles, pendant ce temps, se sont immobilisées à nouveau sur la grille de départ. Il en est beaucoup plus rassuré en voyant, de voir ces images, en sachant que le pilote est pratiquement indemne. regardez le chronomètre. Oui, après 12 secondes, les 14 secondes 98, on est précis. Le premier extincteur est en action.
Comunicano adesso che il collega coequipier Nigel Mansell si è portato alla palattina del pronto soccorso a salutare Berger.
Alors on précise que Mansell s'est rendu auprès de son coéquipier.
L'allestimento della pista nel punto di uscita di Berger, subito dopo il rettichino, all'inizio della curva del tamburello.
Et le voilà, Nigel Mansell avec Cesare Fiorio, le nouveau directeur sportif de la Ferrari, lui qui a remplacé Marco Piccinini. Eh bien, des débuts victorieux à Rio. Maintenant, c'est une expérience plus douloureuse ici à Imola. Reste à savoir si la Ferrari restante prendra le deuxième départ. Il faudra avant cela que l'on soit sûr de la raison de la sortie de route, ce qui semble évident d'après les dires de Thierry Boutsen, mais il faut peut-être aussi essayer de savoir pourquoi cet aileron a tout à coup lâché, s'est tout à coup affaissé, et c'est sans doute la question que se posent Nigel Mansell et Cesare Fiorio avant d'aligner la Ferrari numéro 27 au deuxième départ.
Vi ricordo che la corsa è stata interrotta all'inizio del quarto giro, a metà del quarto giro, quando Senna era al comando con 2 secondi e 770 su Prost, Mansell a 7 secondi e 506.
Alors le classement au moment de l'interruption était conforme, en tout cas, oui, était conforme tout à fait à la grille de départ, avec Senna qui était en tête devant Prost, puis Mansell, Patrese, Berger, Boutsen, Nannini, Piquet. Nous sommes bien sûr comme vous dans l'attente d'informations concernant la suite des opérations. Avec tout de même et heureusement ce soulagement de savoir le pilote pratiquement indemne après une pareille embardée.
We will restart at 20 past 3 according to race direction.
Alors nouveau départ à 15h20, c'est-à-dire dans une petite vingtaine de minutes.
20 minuti dopo le 15, viene ora comunicato dalla direzione, quindi 20 alle 3, 20 alle 15:20 verrà ridata la partenza, mentre adesso vediamo le immagini della Ferrari di Gerhard Berger. Aggiacciarsi queste immagini, comunque la macchina ha tenuto molto bene, i sistemi di protezione con un urso simile.
Et ici devant le stand de Ferrari. On attend. Je ne sais pas où Mansell a immobilisé sa voiture, difficile, je ne le vois pas de là. Si, elle est sur la grille.
Via via che passi al tempo si fanno sempre più confortanti. Il commissario Zanini subito in zona traguardo. Il commissario Zanini subito in zona traguardo. Incentives really good directly behind that on that. We said that the Ferrari is not winning time. Because that's just certain of the reason why. Boost is trying to win
a aussi fallu beaucoup de chance pour que les débris de la voiture, ces débris qui étaient projetés de toutes parts, n'atteignent pas tout le peloton qui était derrière Berger et qui, ici la voiture de Mansell, et qui passait à proximité immédiate. On a vu des roues s'élever très haut dans les airs. Beaucoup de chance pour tout le monde, pour Berger en particulier dans cette aventure, qui est là pour rappeler que c'est un sport qui présente des risques certains, mais des risques que l'on peut calculer et surtout maîtriser. La question que l'on peut se poser est de savoir si le fait de perdre un aileron avant rend la voiture totalement inconduisible. Eh bien, la chose est évidente, c'est une question de pression d'air, car il n'y a plus d'appui qui se fait sur l'avant. C'est-à-dire qu'à ces vitesses, la voiture aurait tendance à se conduire presque comme un avion. Toute la pression de l'air se pose sur l'aileron arrière et déséquilibre la voiture de telle façon que l'avant se soulève quelque peu, et cela pourrait rendre dans un premier temps la voiture un peu sous-vireuse, mais là ça a totalement, je pense, soulevé l'avant de la voiture. 1 centimètre suffit, 1 ou 2 centimètres suffit, et pour la rendre tout à fait incontrôlable. C'est-à-dire que Berger n'aura même pas eu la possibilité d'essayer de modifier un tout petit peu la trajectoire pour ne pas heurter le mur de plein fouet, mais dans un angle le plus petit possible. Et ici, la McLaren Honda de Ayrton Senna, puis celle d'Alain Prost. Alain Prost qui est assis là, avec quelques amis. Ricardo Patrese. La Ferrari de Mansell. Beaucoup de calme et de sérénité partout. La Benetton de Nannini. Et nous allons peut-être, si vous le voulez bien, mettre à profit l'attente maintenant pour vous rappeler les principaux changements intervenus durant l'entre-saison et les principaux changements qui concernent le règlement. Tout d'abord, en ce qui concerne les nouvelles équipes, on a enregistré cette année le retour de l'équipe Brabham, avec un moteur Judd et des pneus Pirelli, le retour du manufacturier italien également à la compétition, avec les pilotes Brundle et Modena pour l'équipe Brabham. Ici, c'est Andrea De Cesaris que vous voyez. Cette équipe Brabham qui est gérée par un groupe, par un financier suisse. Et puis il y a également l'équipe Onyx Ford qui, elle, n'a pas encore passé le cap des préqualifications. Elle est confiée, les voitures seront confiées à Johansson et Gachot. Et puis parmi les nouveaux pilotes, il faut mentionner les noms de Johnny Herbert, ce jeune pilote anglais qui a surpris tout le monde en obtenant le 4e rang le mois dernier à Rio au volant de la Benetton Ford. Olivier Grouillard, nouveau venu également, pilote français qui a rejoint l'équipe Ligier. Gregor Wojtek, le Suisse, qui lui est le seul pilote de l'équipe Eurobrun qui, juste avant le début de la saison, a changé le moteur Judd contre le moteur Ford contre le moteur Judd. Gregor Wojtek, un garçon de 24 ans qui s'était préqualifié à Rio mais qui ne s'est pas qualifié, alors qu'ici il ne s'est pas préqualifié. Bertrand Gachot, on l'a dit, un pilote français au volant de l'Onyx, et puis deux Allemands nouveaux venus, Volker Weidler qui lui pilotera la Rial et Joachim Winkelhock qui pilotera la deuxième AGS. En ce qui concerne les moteurs, on sait que tous les moteurs sont maintenant des moteurs atmosphériques et l'on a enregistré l'arrivée de 3 nouveaux groupes propulseurs avec le Renault V10 et l'on revoit une fois encore cette sortie de route de Berger, le Renault V10 qui équipe en exclusivité les Williams, le moteur Lamborghini V12 pour les Lola et un moteur Yamaha V8 à 5 soupapes par cylindre qui lui équipera les Axpeed, dont aucune des deux voitures n'a passé le cap des préqualifications. Vous voyez ces roues qui se baladent sur la piste et tous ces débris. C'est ici, en plein Tamburello, dans cette grande courbe à gauche, qui est survenu plutôt cet accident, cet embardé. Et c'est à la hauteur de la courbe Villeneuve que les vitesses de pointe sont atteintes. Deux impacts, oui, pour la Ferrari qui a tout de même rebondi quelque peu.
Proprio quasi all'inizio della figura dove c'è la tonnella. Fermi.
Et ici, on s'affaire autour de l'autre Ferrari, la numéro 27. Je crois qu'il n'y aura pas grand-chose à retirer de l'autre châssis. C'est cette nouvelle Ferrari qui est tout entière l'œuvre de John Barnas, cet ingénieur anglais qui est établi à Guildford. Une direction bicéphale chez Ferrari, avec cette enseigne anglaise qui a une énorme importance. Et puis, je crois que l'on peut dire, bien qu'il soit hâtif de vouloir tirer des conclusions, on peut dire que cette nouvelle boîte de vitesse tout à fait révolutionnaire, puisqu'elle est commandée de façon électromagnétique par deux petites, non pas par un levier de vitesse traditionnel, mais par deux petites manettes qui sont situées directement sur le volant et qui, à chaque fois qu'on les actionne, donnent des impulsions électroniques qui font changer les rapports. Je pense que cette boîte de vitesse ne semble pas du tout en cause, bien que l'on change, on passe de 6e en 7e à peu près à cet endroit. Le mois dernier à Rio, ce système manquait totalement de fiabilité jusqu'à ce que, à la surprise générale, la voiture de Mansell tienne toute la course. Ici, la fiabilité semble avoir été trouvée en adoptant de nouvelles soupapes de commande pour le changement de vitesse, des soupapes qui sont fabriquées en Allemagne et qui semblent donner pleine satisfaction. Si l'on revient aux principaux changements de cette saison 89, il faut parler des transferts et en premier lieu du départ de Michele Alboreto de Ferrari où il a rejoint Tyrrell, ne parvenant pas à se qualifier pour cette course. Tyrrell qui traîne une toute nouvelle voiture ici qui a été confiée pour la course à Jonathan Palmer. Il y a Boutsen qui a passé de Benetton à Williams. Modena, on l'a dit, de Eurobrun à Brabham. Brundle lui a fait son retour à la Formule 1. Brundle qui est champion du monde en titre au niveau des épreuves d'endurance. Il revient à la compétition en Formule 1 au sein de l'équipe Brabham. Nicola Larini, un jeune pilote italien de Colonie à Osella, où il fait bonne figure, je dirais bien meilleure figure que Piercarlo Ghinzani, qui lui n'a pas réussi à se préqualifier. De Cesaris de Rial à Dallara. Mansell, c'était peut-être le plus important des transferts de Williams à Ferrari. Et Suzuki de Lola à Zackbid, Johansson de Ligier à Onyx. En ce qui concerne
qu'ils ont eu en Brésil, d'accord. À propos de
alors le speaker officiel annonce que si bien Woodson que Capi, je crois, partiront de la ligne des stands.
A 7 decimi, secondo settimo Ragnoni, ottavo Piquet, nono Wall, decimo Gugliaro, 16esimo Catti, 12esimo Larini, 13esimo De Cesaris, 14esimo Martini, 15esimo Tacchini, 16esimo Moria, 17esimo Poi, 17esimo Herbert, 19esimo Guglielmi, 20esimo Nakarini. E seguivano Brandon, Sala, Farmer e Capelli.
Nigel Mansell qui s'en va retourner vers le... Il a l'air un peu effondré, mais c'est toujours un peu son attitude à Nigel Mansell. Mais là, il a l'air particulièrement soucieux. On peut le comprendre, de même que on comprend qu'il veut absolument savoir le pourquoi de cette sortie de route avant de remonter dans la Ferrari. Car si cela devait être une défectuosité d'ordre général, d'ordre même conceptuel, ce serait évidemment pour lui extrêmement périlleux de reprendre le départ.
Abbiamo visto anche Allio, c'è un po' di confusione per quanto riguarda la partenza dai box, perché a questo punto c'è Allio, c'è la Bernà, l'abbiamo visto prima, perché avevamo sentito Butzen, quindi abbiamo sempre ritratto con la partenza. Guarda un po' qual è esattamente adesso.
Et ici, alors on voit une image enregistrée à bord de la voiture de Warwick qui est arrivée. Vous voyez les drapeaux, voilà la vue du pilote juste au moment de l'impact, la vue de Warwick qui arrivait juste derrière. Et dans 5 minutes, on va repartir. Mais c'est très, très impressionnant. Regardez pour Warwick qui voit cette roue folle et qui voit le feu qui s'allume sur la droite. Une image extrêmement saisissante, ce qui doit se passer à ce moment-là dans la tête des pilotes. Il ne s'agit en tout cas pas de perdre la concentration. Heureusement que tout cela se conclut plutôt bien, plutôt très bien, puisque nous venons d'apprendre par l'intermédiaire de James Hunt, qui a vu Berger, que celui-ci souffre simplement de quelques brûlures très très légères aux mains, et à part cela, il est parfaitement indemne. On s'en réjouit, mais on peut se demander, imaginer ce qui s'est passé dans sa tête au moment où le feu a pris, et ces quelques secondes extrêmement brèves quant à la valeur de l'intervention ont dû lui sembler particulièrement longues.
La vettura. E siamo tornati in diretta, ma io darei la linea a Palazzoli.
Devo fare una domanda a Clay. Clay, deve essere terribile essere in macchina.
Et tout le monde est déjà installé dans la voiture, sauf Mansell.
È un momento che sei completamente indifeso, sono incidenti più difficili, più pericolosi, è un guasto tecnico. Il pilota si trova nell'impossibilità di effettuare qualsiasi correzione, poi a questa velocità altissima ti trovi il muro.
Alors, on voit que l'on pousse également la voiture d'Olivier Grouillard. Et si Boutsen et Caffi vont partir de la ligne des stands, c'est pour la raison suivante. Leurs voitures ont tout de même été touchées par des éléments, des débris de la Ferrari. Et c'est au volant de leur mulet, de leur voiture de réserve qu'ils vont prendre le départ. Et le règlement prévoit en ce cas qu'ils doivent partir de la ligne des stands après tout le monde. Alors on part sur la valeur des positions acquises au moment de l'interruption, soit après 3 tours, et ce sera une addition de une addition de temps à laquelle il faudra procéder. Les ordinateurs le feront très bien. Et ici, vous voyez le président Balestre, Jean-Marie Balestre, souvent décrié, souvent critiqué, pas toujours à tort, mais là je crois qu'il faut tout de même lui rendre cette justice, que c'est grâce à sa persévérance, à son autorité et à sa volonté que les voitures de Formule 1 sont aussi résistantes. Et il y a quelques pilotes qui, je ne veux pas dire, lui doivent la vie à ce niveau-là, mais sans doute que des garçons comme Philippe Alliot, après son embardée terrible du Mexique de l'an dernier, de Derek Warwick, une embardée terrible aussi au Canada, et aujourd'hui Gerhard Berger, lui savent gré de sa ténacité, de son autorité face à certains constructeurs qui auraient plutôt tendance à alléger les choses. Et je ne dis pas qu'ils ne se soucient pas de la vie de leur...
Back to his pit, he has confirmed with the Ferrari management. He's gone out to his car in his crash helmet, and I'm happy to confirm that what Steve Ryder said about Gerhard Berger is correct. It would appear that we are now going to have a 58-lap race, and the San-Marino Grand-Prix will be decided on aggregate. So it's going to be a very tricky business to work it all out. But with the news that Mansell appears definitely to be starting, as you look at Alain Prost, with Senna on his right and about a minute to go before the start of the race, there's going to be, now I have an official statement, there is going to be one introductory lap, followed by a warm-up lap, and then a 55-lap race.
Yes, they're clearing the grid now, and I must say the decision for Nigel Mansell to start in the other Ferrari is one with which I wholeheartedly disagree. And rather strangely, I spoke to Nigel about 5 minutes ago, and he said that he also didn't want to drive. He was just disappearing in to discuss what they were going to do with the Ferrari people. And I thought that I got the impression for him that even if they wanted to race, he was not going to drive, because that was certainly as yet an unexplained failure on the car. And I think first of all, Nigel won't be in the mood to race. He won't have the confidence in the car, and I really think that in the interest of safety, he should not be driving.
Well, away they go on this introductory lap, and it is a pretty saddened atmosphere at the present moment, alleviated by the fact that at least we know that Gerhard Berger is alive and has no broken bones. So Ayrton Senna gently leading round, followed by Alain Prost, with Nigel Mansell, the sole Ferrari, in the race now, followed by Riccardo Patrese's Williams Renault, and this is Derek Warwick's car, the Arrows Ford. And by the way, Derek was about 5 seconds behind the accident to Gerhard Berger, and we have seen pictures of what Derek Warwick saw, or what his camera saw, and you saw the rear wheel of Gerhard Berger's car bounce across the road and be narrowly missed by Derek Warwick's Arrows. And of course, this is a very worrying time for all the drivers. They know exactly what has happened to Berger, and although we have gone to great lengths to emphasize that nowadays everything possible is done to ensure that the course is as safe as possible, that the spectators are as safe as possible, that there is adequate and skilled marshalling, that the cars are built to very rigid safety specifications which are laid down by the governing body of the sport, the drivers are strapped in, and what will have saved Berger without a doubt is the fact that nowadays it is mandatory for there to be a compressed fresh air supply on the car, which is connected to the driver's helmet and which is actuated by an inertia valve which releases when there is an impact like the one that Berger's Ferrari had, and which releases fresh air into the driver's helmet for some 60 seconds. Now, we have timed the time that the flames took after they started to be extinguished by the very efficient fire marshals, and it was, give or take a second or so, 30 seconds. So that means to say that Gerhard Berger was protected from the appalling catastrophe which happened to Joe Siffert in the BRM many years ago, because he was able to breathe air.
Yes, and certainly it worked well, because Berger, we don't know what minor injuries he's got. He's gone to hospital now for examination, but certainly he was his usual smiling, laughing and joking self. Apparently when he was taken to the medical centre at the track, he was talking to people and generally apparently quite well. So that is tremendous news. But it certainly is a very subdued atmosphere here now at Imola. As they come round, they're going to form up on the grid, and as we understand it, they're then going to do another parade lap in the normal way. Although it looks to me much more like a start this time.
Well, very quickly, and we'll keep an eye on it, for those of you who've got pencil and paper handy, because this is going to be a 55-lap race, but the result being decided on an aggregate, and this is indeed a start. So, watch for the lights. For the second time, go. And Prost leads away. Senna second. Patrese up to third. Mansell momentarily back now into fifth position, because the Benetton has gone forward and Derek Warwick is well up.
And that is very significant for the in-house McLaren race, that Prost made a fabulous start, but Senna is attacking, and he's got the inside line for the corner. And Senna outbreaks Prost at the end of the drag away from the start. And so the two McLarens are back in line astern in the same order that they were, with some 3-second advantage to Senna from the first race. Clean start.
Senna, Prost, Patrese, Nannini up into fourth place. There is Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari fifth. Nelson Piquet up into sixth position, and before he was down in eighth position. And they stream away now, coming up to the Variante Alta, which is about 2/3 of the way round the first lap. Already it is a two races in one. The two McLarens in front, Ayrton Senna ahead of Alain Prost in second place. Then Riccardo Patrese in the Renault V10 powered Williams, Nannini, Mansell, Piquet, Derek Warwick. That is De Cesaris in the Dallara.
And I think I saw, as the field streamed through, then I think I saw Johnny Herbert up into something like 12th place, which means that he must have made a cracking good start, because he started from 18th place on the grid.
Yes, Johnny Herbert had a pretty dismal practice. Now you're looking at Derek Warwick chasing Nelson Piquet, and I'm looking down through the field to see where Herbert is, but there is Patrese in third place. The two McLaren Hondas already well away. Then behind Patrese, Nannini and Mansell closing, followed by Piquet.
And Herbert was in 12th, he's now up to 11th, and Johnny Herbert seems to be charging from quite a lowly grid position.
And Johnny Herbert, I'm glad to say, is walking much better than he was in Brazil. But there is the race, the second race, because already the McLarens are well away. And it's Riccardo Patrese, the man who is now the most experienced Grand Prix driver of them all. This is his 178th Grand Prix, in third position. And you were looking at the caption then, which gave you the positions after the previous race. So there goes Prost. Here is Patrese, chased by Nannini in the Benetton Ford. That is Nigel Mansell in fifth place. They're coming down to the Rivazza, and you can see the gap between Prost, Patrese, Nannini, Mansell, Nelson Piquet, Derek Warwick, and incidentally Satoru Nakajima in the warm-up in the second Lotus went extremely well this morning. Now they're streaming through to complete the lap. Senna goes through, long gap, Prost, long gap now. Then it's Patrese, Nannini, no change there. There is Derek Warwick in the Arrows Ford. We've got a camera on that car, and hopefully we'll be seeing some pictures from it soon. And now we are into the third lap of this restart, as Mansell goes through and attacks Alessandro Nannini successfully, who fights back as they go round the left-handed Tosa bend, climbing up towards the Piratella. Mansell moves across to protect his position. Nannini re-attacks. Piquet is behind them. Senna is leading, Prost is second, Patrese is third, Mansell is now in fourth position and pulling away from Nannini. Sparks flying from the back of the Ferrari.
What's interesting there was to see that although Nannini got out of that second gear corner rather quicker than Nigel Mansell on straight acceleration up the hill, Mansell was able to outdrag Nannini, which would indicate that the Ferrari engine isn't that bad, because it would appear to have more power than the Cosworth in Nannini's car. We know that Ferrari aren't running a lot of wings, so seeing Mansell pass Nannini on the straight wasn't a surprise, but it was interesting to see that on pure acceleration that the Ferrari had the upper hand. And that's one of the Ligiers being parked.
Now, I'm delighted to tell you that thanks to an extremely efficient computer, I'm going to be able to give you, as this race goes forward, the actual aggregate situation. At the present moment, after 6 laps, Prost is some 4.8 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. There you see Nigel Mansell, Riccardo Patrese, who is following hard, is actually in 4th position on aggregate. But there goes Prost. There is Riccardo Patrese. Here is Nigel Mansell. And Mansell, shrugging off whatever feelings he may have about Berger's crash, is grimly setting about this race. He has caught and passed Nannini, and now he's closing on Patrese. That is one of the Minardis in the pit. There is Alessandro Nannini, who had such a fight with Nelson Piquet last year. Piquet in the Lotus Honda last year, the Lotus Judd this year. And the V12 Ferrari is going well. There is Patrese, and Mansell is catching him visibly.
Yes, well, Mansell, as we all know, is through and through a racer, and it's quite clear, just from looking at him, that he's forgotten all about what's gone before, and that's normal when the green light goes on, everything else becomes irrelevant. And I just keep my fingers crossed and hope and pray that everything will be all right for Nigel, because I still don't agree that he should be with the decision to run him in the race. Meanwhile, Johnny Herbert is charging. He's up into something like 10th place on the road, and at the moment on the combined aggregate score he's in 14th place.
Now you're going to have to bear with us. It's going to be very confusing for you and for us as we try and tell you what is happening here in this race and on the aggregate. But the important thing in this race is that with Senna leading it, with Prost fighting back, because he's definitely gained ground on the Brazilian, Riccardo Patrese is in 3rd position, but he's not going to be for very much longer, because Mansell is catching him. Nannini is in 5th position. There's Piquet 6th. Derek Warwick is in 7th place, and that is Larini in 8th position, with De Cesaris 9th, and Eddie Cheever in the second Arrows in 10th position, and Johnny Herbert there in the yellow and blue Benetton is in 11th place on the road here. Terrific drive already by this brilliant little Englishman, who finished 4th in his first Grand Prix in Brazil. And of course he's got the 1988 Benetton, which is reliable, last year's Ford DFR engine, which is strong, and so is Mansell's semi-automatic gearbox Ferrari. See the way he is catching Patrese.
Yes, indeed, and Mansell, of course, is already in 3rd place on the combined score, but he'll want to get 3rd on the road, and that looks like trouble from Derek Warwick's car. A nasty puff of smoke out of the back of Warwick's car, and I'm afraid that in my book that means only one thing, that his days are numbered, and that the car is blowing oil out, and it's only a matter of time before Derek Warwick's race is run. He's certainly going very well indeed, and that'll be a great shame. And meanwhile, Herbert is absolutely flying in this race. He's got it together because he had a very troubled practice and only qualified something like 22nd or 23rd on the grid as Mansell presses Patrese. And he'll find Patrese a bit more of a handful to pass, I fancy, than he did Nannini. To start off with, the Renault engine has a little bit more power. And Patrese is a notoriously wide person when it comes to overtaking.
Those numbers that you saw along the bottom of the grid were the race numbers in their race positions, and you saw that Riccardo Patrese there was behind Nigel Mansell. The reason being that's the aggregate situation. He's just ahead of him now as they go down towards the Rivazza again. And I think that by the time they come out of the Traguardo, which leads into the fastest part of the course, the left-handed Tamburello, and the climb up to Tosa, Nigel Mansell, who seems to have more power with the V12 Ferrari engine than Patrese has with the V10 Renault engine, will be in a passing position. He needs to be right up close behind the Renault to benefit from its slipstream and come out. He's not close enough yet, but he's getting there.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see just how these two cars compare on the straight. One has to guess, but one would hazard the educated guess that the Williams is running a fair bit more wing and a bit more downforce than the Ferrari, and therefore theoretically will be less aerodynamically efficient in a straight line. Mansell certainly pressing him under acceleration up the hill, but he will need to get very, very close to him over the start-finish line to get the benefit of the toe along down the long straight, the long run down to turn 1.
And it's not going to be very much longer before that happens. But on aggregate now, and I emphasise that this is on aggregate, Senna is leading Prost by 4.7 seconds. Mansell is just ahead of Patrese on aggregate, although you can see that he's just behind him in this second restarted race, which is going to be over 55 laps. Down to the left-handed Rivazza again.
Yes, and this is where it's important for Mansell to get close to Patrese, so he and out of the right-hander now, through the left and then out of the right-hander, he needs to be within about 4 or 5 car lengths, which he just about is. He's certainly picking up the toe there, having the benefit of a hole in the air being made by the Williams ahead of him, but I don't think he's close enough this time.
It's hardly surprising that our Italian producer is favouring Mansell, not only because he's in an Italian Ferrari and won in Brazil, but because Senna and Prost are out on their own in front. Senna now some 4.5 seconds ahead of Prost on aggregate, and Prost is some 14 seconds ahead of Mansell on aggregate, as the Englishman once again tries to get to grips with Patrese's Williams Renault.
Yes, and of course, remember, the Italian producer, of course, Patrese is an Italian driver, as well as Nigel being in an Italian car, so this is the battle for them. And Prost, incidentally, has just put up a new fastest lap, and he's closed the gap by 0.3 of a second on Senna. It's down around 4.5 seconds now.
And an astounding fact is that Johnny Herbert, one of the heroes of Brazil in his first Grand Prix drive, who started 23rd on the grid here at Imola, is 10th on the road. And there you see in the pits the Minardi of the Italian driver Pierluigi Martini, and Patrese, who drove a sterling race to lead for some 16 laps in Brazil before he finally lost the lead and then temporarily regained it, is doing well here, because notwithstanding what I have been saying, he is holding off Nigel Mansell.
Yes, and looking at them, I would say that the Renault V10 has more power than the Ferrari engine, because Patrese is able to run ahead of Mansell on the road without losing any ground, despite the fact that the Ferrari's got the hole in the air to go through, and there is the other Williams of Boutsen, and that's...
It's Johnny Herbert. Johnny Herbert in the Benetton Ford is right up with Thierry Boutsen, and that is an incredible achievement. The Englishman is scything his way through the field. This is only his second Grand Prix. He's come up from 23rd on the grid.
And that was another testimony to the power of the Renault engine, because Boutsen, having been passed by Herbert round the back of the circuit, was able to simply outpower him down the long straight. And considering that Williams are bound to be running a lot of wing, because that is the way they normally set their cars up, I would have said that the Renault engine is certainly doing its bit, and certainly superior to the Ferrari V12.
A flash from the hospital is that Gerhard Berger has been flown to the Hospital Maiore in Bologna. It's the best hospital in the area. We know that he's got some burns on his face and arms and also on his back. As far as we know, it is nothing worse than that. And now you look at Johnny Herbert in 10th position, catching Thierry Boutsen in the second Williams Renault. Race leader, there he is, Ayrton Senna. Now, how far behind Senna is Alain Prost? You can see there is the answer, and Prost, in his usual smooth and unruffled way, is inexorably gaining. The gap now is just over 1 second.
Yes, over the last 3 laps, Prost has been the quickest car on the circuit, and he's caught pretty much right up with Senna. There you see the fastest lap of the race so far, credited to Alain Prost, and although in fact they're only a second or so apart on the road, of course Senna had some 3.5 seconds from the first part of the race, so Prost has not only got to pass him, he's got to then pull some 4 seconds at least in order to get ahead on the road. But Prost looking to be doing his usual tactic, taking it gently away and then just building up the pressure.
So now on aggregate, I emphasize, Ayrton Senna from Brazil is leading Alain Prost by 4 seconds. That's taking into account the first race, which was stopped. Mansell is in 3rd position, some 19 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. Riccardo Patrese is in 4th position on aggregate. In 5th place is Alessandro Nannini. In 6th position is Nelson Piquet. That is the aggregate situation. I'm wishing desperately that this race was just a straight 55-lap one. It would be much easier for us to explain, much easier for you to understand. But as you see from the caption, Alain Prost is now the fastest man on the circuit, and he is within an ace of the lap record, which is Nelson Piquet, 1 minute 28.67. And Alain Prost has actually now broken the lap record. It's just gone up on my screen here, 1 minute 28.65. Alain Prost has knocked 0.02 of a second off the lap record, and you can see for yourself what the effect is. There are no team orders in the McLaren team. Both Senna and Prost have identical machinery in terms of chassis, tyres and Honda V10 engine. And Senna, who is world champion, is staving off double world champion Alain Prost there, who has already won twice at San-Marino, at Imola, 3 times if you count his disqualified one, and he's looking to make it free officially now.
Now, I just noticed watching the lap times then that both McLarens were a bit over half a second slower on the lap they've just completed than the previous couple of laps, and that makes me suspect that possibly the dreaded Lamborghini engine is throwing oil out on the circuit, a policy that it pursued religiously throughout all the qualifying sessions, much to everybody else's annoyance. It was spreading a thin coat of oil all the way around the track. But in fact, it's not as much of a joke as it was thought by a lot of people when they announced their engine, because it certainly seems to have plenty of power. It's very new, it doesn't run for very long, but when it runs, it seems to have plenty of power.
So of these two, and look at the way Prost is going, but as I have said many times before, catching is one thing, getting past is another. And Prost has got to be a very daring man to get past Ayrton Senna. Now, race order in this race. It is Senna leading. Prost is in 2nd place. Patrese is in 3rd place, just ahead of Mansell in 4th position. In 5th place is Alessandro Nannini. In 6th position is Nelson Piquet. In 7th position is Derek Warwick. In 8th position it is Larini. And in 9th position it is now Johnny Herbert. So Johnny Herbert is climbing up through the field, and Prost is climbing up onto the gearbox very shortly of Ayrton Senna's McLaren Honda. And this is certainly confirmation of the fact that Alain Prost, 35 times a Grand Prix winner in this Grand Prix has lost absolutely none of his motivation, and this is his 137th Grand Prix. Into the Acqua Minerale and out. The two McLaren Hondas. Senna leads, Prost second.
Yes, I certainly confirm that. Prost is really a different animal to the one he was this time a year ago. His motivation is now as strong, if not stronger than ever, and believe you me, he feels that he can beat Senna for the championship this year, and he's going to do everything he possibly can to do it. The problem at the moment is, of course, Senna will not be easy to pass. The cars, of course, same engine, same aerodynamic setup, you'll have no straight line speed advantage, so he's going to have to try and harry Senna into possibly an error, or else just snap at his heels for the whole race and try and find a way around. Johnny Herbert is now 11th overall in the combined races, 9th on the road, and really getting settled into Grand Prix racing very well indeed.
I remind you that this race is of terrific importance to Ayrton Senna, because Prost, by finishing second in the Brazilian Grand Prix, scored 6 World Championship points. Senna, by being involved with that coming together with the unfortunate Gerhard Berger, scored no points. And now you see the battle for third position in this race, and to some extent, to a great extent, the battle for third on aggregate. It is still Riccardo Patrese, third in this second leg, keeping ahead of Nigel Mansell, who is actually closer than he was last time we saw him. But Mansell is half a second ahead of Patrese on aggregate. Race order this race: Senna, Prost, Patrese, Mansell, and in 5th position it is still Alessandro Nannini. In 6th position it is still Nelson Piquet.
Yes, and that half second by sitting behind Patrese is not going to make Nigel feel at all comfortable, but he's got a big problem to find a way round Patrese unless Patrese can be persuaded to make error. And there now Prost needs to be a little bit closer than this to have a go at Senna. It's as close as he's been, but he really needs to be within 2 or 3 car lengths, not the 7 or 8 that he's back now, to be able to attack him at the end of the straight. But Mansell has got a very definite problem with Patrese, because it's quite clear that the Williams is every bit as good, if not better, than the Ferrari in straight line speed.
Well, now the excitement is really starting, because Prost is almost in a passing position to take Ayrton Senna, and the Brazilian will be well and truly aware of that. He will see the red and white McLaren of his teammate big in his mirrors. They're dropping down now towards and through the Acqua Minerale bends, third gear, accelerating away up to the right and the left, the new chicane, or the fairly new chicane at the Variante Alta. Now building up speed as they drop down again towards the bridge, underneath it at about 155 miles an hour. There, as they dip momentarily out of our sight going away, come back now to the Rivazza, and Prost is definitely going to be in a passing situation. Whether or not he's able to do it remains to be seen. We rather doubt it. James is shaking his head. And as they come through to complete the lap. Race order at the present moment, this race. And the captions you're going to see continually are aggregate captions. But as they complete the lap, which they've just done, it is Senna leading, Prost second. Still the battle we're waiting for between Patrese and Mansell for third place in this race. And there's a tremendous gap now between the McLarens. And it's still Patrese and Mansell as they go past. And once again, Prost is easing up. Patrese third, Mansell in 4th place. Nannini goes through in 5th position, not so very far behind Alessandro Nannini. There are Patrese and Mansell. Nelson Piquet is in 6th position, and in 7th position it is Derek Warwick.
Yes, and that is the closest that Mansell has been to Patrese as they crossed the start-finish line, came past the pits as we saw them, and that is certainly a big testimony to the power of the Renault engine, because Patrese actually pulled away from Mansell on the straight, despite the fact that the Ferrari was going through the hole in the air made by the Williams. So there's no doubt that Renault have delivered a very good engine to the Williams team.
And Thierry Boutsen, of course, fairly conspicuous by his absence amongst the front runners, is actually in 8th place at the present moment. So the Williams Renault of Thierry Boutsen not going as well as Patrase's. That is one of the Lotus Judds. I can't see which one because I can't see the number and I can't see the driver, but I suspect it's Satoru Nakajima because Piquet went past us all right on the previous lap, in which case the Japanese driver, who finished well down, 24th on the grid, although he was 10th in the warm-up this morning after they had corrected a problem, looks as though he is out of the race. But still, the race at the front, with now Senna leading Prost on aggregate by 3.6 seconds. And what a solid stream of cars. This 3.5 litre racing is much more competitive, except for the McLarens in this race, than the mixture of turbocharged and normally aspirated cars was last year. That's Martin Brundle in the Brabham. And that is Tarquini leading. Behind Tarquini is De Cesaris. Behind De Cesaris is Modena. Behind Modena is, it looks like Griard to me, and then Martin Brundle. And at the present moment, the positions in this second 55-lap race still remain: Senna leading, Prost in second place, Patrese third, just ahead of Nigel Mansell. In 5th position, it is still Alessandro Nannini. In 6th place, then it is Nelson Piquet. In 7th position, it is Derek Warwick. And in 8th place is Thierry Boutsen. 9th is Johnny Herbert, who still hasn't got past Boutsen. And then it is Larini.
A good little scrap going on here down the field, and Martin Brundle surely will be well pleased with this, because he's been a little bit beleaguered in the Brabham team by the fact that Stefano Modena, the exceptionally talented young Italian, has been on the whole around about half a second a lap quicker than him in every practice session, which of course is a pretty depressing fact for a driver in a team. But Martin has risen to the occasion, and as you see there, he's got one car between them, and he's actually up with his teammate, so he'll be well pleased about that. Oops!
Oh my goodness, that's another one. Oh, and that's Stefano Modena, not Martin Brundle, and he looks perfectly okay because he's glanced the wall, gone backwards into the tyre barrier, and I sincerely hope there is not the... Yes, he is, out of the car, here it is.
And look, this looks like another car failure. For no reason the car just suddenly developed a mind of its own. No, number 9, that's Brundle. Ah, yes, beg your pardon. So that is indeed Modena, and not a big impact. He jumped straight out of the car, but it certainly looked like, again, some sort of a failure, because the car just suddenly turned sharp right.
And that was lap 18 in this 55-lap race. So, as we know, Modena has got out of the car, and I think that was him just taking his... And there is a march in the background. That is, I presume, Capelli's car from the first race. And fast and furious at the front, Prost is giving Senna no quarter, as he's right with him. The two McLaren Hondas battling for the lead, and they're in a situation now. And Johnny Herbert, incidentally, in 11th place now, is slowly closing on the 10th position man, Nicola Larini. And Patrese still keeps Nigel Mansell behind him. And it's not because Nigel is in a passing position there. He's actually got a good length ahead of him on the road.
Yes, and you saw then going up the hill how the Williams Renault out-dragged the Ferrari. He actually pulled away from him on acceleration. We've seen that he can at least hold him on top speed, despite the fact of the Ferrari being perfectly positioned in the tow. So this is going to be a frustrating and difficult afternoon for Mansell. There's no doubt that he'll be able to lap quicker if he could get past Patrese, but it's a serious problem working out a way how to do that. Johnny Herbert at the moment, some 8.5 seconds. And Mansell jumped him. That was absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic. Now, fantastic move, and Patrese appears to have stopped. Nigel Mansell is now in third position, whichever way you choose to look at this race. And there is Modena's car being hoisted off the circuit, the Brabham Judd, and there are the leaders. Now, I don't think Nigel Mansell is going to be able to do anything about this battle for the lead between Senna and Prost, with definitely Riccardo Patrese out of the race. Nigel Mansell is about half a minute behind Senna and Prost, and that is, at this stage of the race, a terrific gap. Now let's look at a replay. Patrese brakes hard, loses it, goes on the grass, and Nigel Mansell goes through.
That looked like engine to me. You can see the smoke coming out of the exhaust then of Patrase's car, and it looks like a sudden and terminal engine blow-up, and he just pulled to one side and let Mansell go. I thought he jumped him, but in fact he just pulled over. And Senna a tiny bit further ahead than he has been for some 3 or 4 laps now. Prost has been really hounding him, but suddenly he's not quite close enough.
So now, at this stage of the race, with 20 laps completed, it is in the lead, Ayrton Senna, just ahead of Alain Prost. Nigel Mansell up into third position. Nannini is now in fourth place. Nelson Piquet is fifth, and Derek Warwick is in the points at sixth.
And attacking Nelson Piquet for fifth place.
Mansell goes past our box, the engine of his Ferrari sounding crisp. That is the remaining Brabham of Martin Brundle, and he's been caught by Senna and Prost. This is Prost's, or could be his, opportunity, although Senna is well known, especially from last year, for being brave when it comes to diving through to lap people. And Prost last year said, I've been racing. Now Mansell going suspiciously slow there. Mansell looks to me as though he is out of the race. Yes, the Benetton is past him. Now Piquet is past him. And Nigel Mansell sadly retires from his second Grand Prix for Ferrari. But perhaps in some ways he won't be too unhappy.
No, I'm sure. And he was being pretty frustrated behind Patrese. But this circuit now taking its toll mechanically. We know that Imola is very hard on transmission, hard on brakes, and high on fuel consumption. Well, obviously it's not a fuel problem yet, and there's the battle that they've caught. Martin Brundle busy battling away, letting Senna go, and as a proper driver should, he was aware of the leaders coming up behind him and did not interfere with their battle. That was good driving by Martin Brundle, because he was pretty busy with his own battle, and it's quite easy not to notice the leaders coming up on you.
And as Senna closes up to catch and lap the Dallara, Nigel Mansell walks in perfectly okay, just the Ferrari that's stricken, not Mansell. And Senna now coming up to lap. He's still got De Cesaris in front of him, and Prost has got through, and now Prost is getting a bit closer, and now Prost has got the problem that Senna had. Meantime, I can tell you that the second best British driver in this race, the best being Johnny Herbert, is Jonathan Palmer in the new 018 Tyrrell. He's up into 12th position. Warwick in the top place, then for British drivers, then Herbert, and there they go.
And Prost, through good fortune, looks as if he's come upon De Cesaris as they hit the main straight, and the McLaren Honda should be able to outdrag him, as he is doing. And that, luckily for Prost, gets rid of the De Cesaris problem at quite a convenient moment.
Prost has got an opportunity now to catch and get past the Dallara. They're coming up the climb from the Tosa. Martin Brundle has come into the pits, so that's the second Brabham in trouble. Modena out of the race. Martin Brundle into the pits. It is Senna leading. There is Prost in second place. Nannini is now in third position. Nelson Piquet is up into fourth place. Derek Warwick is in fifth position. Thierry Boutsen in the sole remaining Williams Renault is in sixth position. Then it is Eddie Cheever in seventh place. Eighth is Nicola Larini. And in ninth position is Johnny Herbert. Prost. Long way to go in this race yet. We are on lap 23 out of 55. 2/5 distance then.
Yes, and Herbert is actually now losing ground to Larini. He had got as close as 5 seconds to him, but he's now down over 10 seconds behind. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if maybe Herbert's got a problem.
And Ayrton Senna is lapping in about 1 minute 29 seconds, which is just a few tenths of a second outside Nelson Piquet's previous lap record, although we know that Alain Prost has already broken the lap record.
And as we saw last year, Senna is getting the better of the traffic. He's used the traffic well to be able to open a little bit of breathing space to Alain Prost, because I should think he was feeling a bit uncomfortable. Prost had, after the first 3 or 4 laps of the race, when Prost had let him go off to a quick start, Prost had then relentlessly reeled him in and was starting to harry him a lot, and the traffic's given him just that little bit of a breather.
Now, to emphasise the situation where the two McLarens are so much in command of this race, as they were in command of most races last year, as Alain Prost goes through in second position there, he is some 5 seconds behind Ayrton Senna, and Nannini in third position is some 48 seconds behind the race leader. Prost has got to get through and lap now, but Senna has got to do the same thing. And in fifth position behind Nelson Piquet, Derek Warwick. Sixth is Boutsen, seventh is Cheever, eighth is Larini. A fine drive by the Italian in the Osella. And in ninth position, it is Johnny Herbert. And Ayrton Senna has lapped everybody up to Johnny Herbert, who is in ninth position. He's lapped Tarquini, who is 10th, Caffey, who is 11th, De Cesaris in the second Dallara, who is in 12th position. There are going to be a lot more retirements in this race before it's finished. We're not expecting any tyre changes. That was the McLaren pit crew you saw there. Neither Goodyear nor Pirelli, who share the drivers in Grand Prix racing these days, are expecting anybody to stop for tyres, but you've always got to be ready. You never know. This is a circuit which is notorious for lacking grip. It's got a new compound, and there are a lot of problems of lack of grip during practice.
And Derek Warwick in 5th place sounds very sick. On the car sounds very sick, but I suspect it's a broken exhaust, because that's about the only thing that can make it sound so horrible, and still, just a cracked exhaust pipe, and still allow the engine to function reasonably well. So despite the horrible rough noise, he's still holding his own very well in 5th place.
As Nannini goes through, the third place man, Alessandro Nannini, 6th in Brazil. In last year's, the 1988 Benetton Ford, neither the new chassis nor the new Ford engine. And there's the confirmation of the gap. You see Alain Prost, who is in second place, 50 seconds ahead of Alessandro Nannini, and that is about 2/3 of a lap. And we are now on lap 26 of this second race within a race. And there goes Alain Prost now. He's got a fairly clear circuit in front of him as he drops down into the Acqua Minerale, climbs up. That is where Riccardo Patrese went off in the Brabham some years ago in the lead and got a tremendous cheer for going off from the Italian crowd, because although he was Italian, he was not in a Ferrari. And dropping down now from the Acqua Minerale and the Variante Alta to the Ravazza again. And Prost has got to put on a charge now if Senna is not to get away from him. And Senna is coming up to take Gugelmin, and Prost is once again catching him.
Well, Gugelmin should let him through because they're friends from way back. And this is a chance. It'll be interesting to see if Prost can slip in a new lap record. He's got a little bit of clear air. He's got some ground to make up. And we'll see if he can respond. And didn't really need to say it, did I? He's just broke that. That was the new lap record. 1 minute 28.066. That's half a second, nearly half a second quicker than the one he set about 6 or 7 laps ago. So Prost, as soon as he gets a clear road, would seem to be the quick man today. Seems to be able to go quicker than Senna, but of course he starts behind Senna in this battle. Not only has he got to pass him, he's got to get 3.5 seconds or so ahead of him before he actually leads the race.
Self-explanatory caption on that diagram there, which showed you the intervals between the first 4 drivers, and there's confirmation that Alain Prost is not only the fastest man on the circuit, but the new lap record holder, 128 miles an hour, which is nearly a full mile an hour faster than Nelson Piquet's lap record, which was put up in the turbocharged Honda-powered Williams when he was in the Williams team. So Alain Prost charging, and now you see Ayrton Senna coming up to catch Johnny Herbert and to lap him. So here's the young Englishman, Johnny Herbert, number 20, 24 years old, comes from Romford, and there's one of the Lotus out. I saw the marshal dashing across the circuit to wave the flag, and it's Piquet. Nelson Piquet is out of the San-Marino Grand Prix to join Stefano Modena, Patrese, Nigel Mansell. Now Nelson Piquet is out, and Senna has lapped Johnny Herbert, and that means to say now Senna leading, Prost in 2nd place, Nannini in 3rd position. Up into 4th place comes Derek Warwick. Up into 5th position comes Thierry Boutsen, and up into 6th position and on the leaderboard in the points again, Johnny Herbert.
And that was interesting to see the way Senna was able to simply outrun Herbert's Benetton Cosworth down the straight, and that must make Herbert look forward to his new Ford engine once they get it running as soon as possible.
Senna has got an enormous amount of racecraft, of course. He's been driving for years and years, one way or another. 20 years he has been racing out of his 29 years, because he started in karts years ago, went up to Formula Ford, then to Formula 3, successful in every category, and then into Formula 1 with the Toleman team. And now you are looking at the Dallara and the Benetton, and in the first 2 6th positions in this race we have Ayrton Senna, followed by Alain Prost. In 3rd position is Alessandro Nannini, and in 4th position behind behind Alessandro Nannini is Derek Warwick. And in 5th position it is Thierry Boutsen, and in 6th place Eddie Cheever, and off spins Johnny Herbert. Herbert spins off in the Benetton. They go through and he can't restart.
Well, he had the engine running after the spin, and he stalled it then as he was about to do a spin turn, and then there was another car coming, and that is not an ideal place to get yourself stranded. So a sad end to Johnny Herbert's race. Well, he's got the engine running, but I would think they will disqualify him for receiving outside assistance, and that's if he can get out of that sandpit, because they don't half bog you down. So an ignominious end for Johnny Herbert to this race, but we certainly know that he's got the ability, and while he was in it he charged. He had a troubled practice, and his performance in Brazil really said it all. Johnny Herbert is definitely a coming man.
But Derek Warwick now in 4th position of the British drivers, as Senna has now built up a commanding lead over Alain Prost, and the Frenchman has really got to motor to do anything about his Brazilian teammate, who goes through, passes the Benetton, and Boutsen is about to catch Derek Warwick, because Thierry Boutsen in 5th place, appropriately enough, number 5, is right up with Derek Warwick. You heard us say earlier on, there's the McLaren team. They're chatting rather than looking expectantly, but you can see that the tyres and wheels have got the tyre warmers on to get them up to nearly operating temperature, so they're quite ready. 7.2 seconds then between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, 1st and 2nd on lap 30 in this 55-lap second leg of the San Marino Grand Prix. Alessandro Nannini still in 3rd position. In 4th place it is still Derek Warwick. Right behind Derek Warwick is Boutsen.
Now, Alain Prost appears to have dropped back a bit from Senna, and it makes me wonder whether he's got a problem, because I don't think that was traffic. They haven't been amongst the traffic for a couple of laps now, and Prost certainly had the upper hand a short while ago, but we'll watch for a couple of laps, but I have a nasty feeling that Prost has got some sort of mechanical problem.
There are just, of the people who finished well up in Brazil, that is to say in the point-scoring top 6 positions, as you watch Maurizio Gugelmin in the March Judd being pursued by Alex Cathy in the Dallara. I would say of the top 6 in Brazil, Mansell is out here, and the Dallara is really going for Gugelmin, who's holding his ground. But Mansell is out. Prost, of course, in 2nd position. Gugelmin, you've just seen passed by the Dallara. Gugelmin, who was 3rd in Brazil. And here is Ayrton Senna really pushing things. He's trying to break away from Prost.
Yes, and he's, in fact, my speculation now that Prost might have a problem, I can now correct. It doesn't look as if he's got one. That must have been traffic that created that gap, because he's back lapping quicker than Senna now.
And Boutsen is now up into 4th place. Unseen by you, Thierry Boutsen has taken Derek Warwick as Senna goes through to complete yet another lap. It looks as though he has got his next Grand Prix victory very much within his grasp. He's 1:14, the same number as Nigel Mansell. Alain Prost, another lap record, 27.708, 128.5 miles an hour. So Prost has lost nothing in terms of performance, and now he's got to do something in terms of gap.
Yes, well, the last 2 laps he's been 0.2 of a second quicker than Senna on both of them. The problem is, of course, that I don't think that that's a big enough performance differential for him to be able to pass Senna without at least persuading Senna to make some sort of a minor mistake. Because too evenly matched, and it's clearly a big problem for Prost, and Senna is nowadays too experienced, I think, to be pressed into a silly mistake.
Race order, lap 32, Senna leads, Prost 2nd, Nannini 3rd, Warwick 4th, Boutsen 5th, and Eddie Cheever in 6th position, ahead of Larini, who is in 7th place. Jonathan Palmer in the new Tyrrell 018 that we have not screened is up into 8th position. And now Boutsen on aggregate is ahead of Derek Warwick. And now we are with Derek Warwick, who is in 4th position. This is the first time that we've seen the camera in this race, the camera car operating properly. And it's Eddie Cheever, my apologies, I just see, but Eddie, both the arrows have got cameras on them, and Eddie Cheever then, who is in 6th position, behind Thierry Boutsen. If you see a car in front, unless he's lapping him, it's Thierry Boutsen, And now Eddie Cheever, I'll talk you around the course with him as he's dropping down through the Acqua Minerale. Now he's accelerating up round the right-hander. He will be up into 5th gear. He's coming up now towards the Variante Alta. He's doing about 180 miles an hour before he breaks through the Variante Alta in 3rd gear. Now up into 4th, 125, 150 miles an hour. Up into 6th gear in a moment. You'll be able to see it. And now he's going down into the Rivazza, 2nd gear, 95 miles an hour. He had all sorts of problems in practice, but he seems to have overcome them. Remember that Eddie Cheever in Brazil staggered away from his car because he's so tall that he was getting blood circulation problems with his knees cramped. I'm glad to say that Arrows have fixed the car for him. And there is the situation on your screens. That is the aggregate situation. And you can see the McLaren of Ayrton Senna, race leader, going round the left-hander at Tosa to climb up towards the Piratella again. And Ayrton Senna has just gone round in 1 minute 27.75, which is actually slower than Alain Prost's lap record, but he still leads.
Yes, and Prost still lapping marginally quicker than him, but it's only the odd 1 or 2 tenths of a second per lap, so he's chipping away at that lead. But Senna really is in the comfortable position at the moment of being able to control the race from the front, because although Prost appears to be able to go a little bit quicker than him on the road, that isn't enough to be a serious threat, and the advantage of leading far outweighs the fact that Prost is lapping a bit quicker.
And we're riding with Eddie Cheever yet again. Now you get experience of what it's like to travel in a 3.5 litre, over 600 horsepower Ford V8 powered Arrows.
Yes, and that is a very good shot of just how much reaction comes back through the steering wheel, how bumpy and buffety the ride in a Formula One car is. These cars have very little suspension movement indeed nowadays, and that is because they depend on keeping the ride height, that is the gap between the bottom of the car and the road, as small as possible and as constant as possible. Therefore, suspension movement is obviously a disadvantage if the car goes up and down, because that affects the aerodynamics. And so they are on pretty much solid suspension. And if you look at the way the steering wheel jumps about in his hands, well, the vibration, remember the camera is mounted on a damper. And we now see the marker on the circuit map as he breasts the hill through the left-hander, and then plunging downhill into the twisted section of the track.
Yes, plunging down towards the Acqua Minerale again. 2nd gear, 3rd out of it, 4th away up the hill. He's doing nearly 150 miles an hour now as he goes round the left, climbing the hill, past the house on the right, under the bridge, down into 3rd gear, about 105 miles an hour, flicks it round the left-hander, up into 4th, 125 miles an hour, dropping down again. That was the highest part of the course. And Eddie Cheever is still in 6th position. The race order on this, the 35th lap. Senna leads, Prost 2nd, Nannini 3rd, Warwick 4th, with Boutsen 5th. We haven't seen them on the screen recently, but that's the situation. And Eddie Cheever, that we've just been riding with, is 6th. And there is Senna catching Boutsen. And Johnny Herbert is back in the race. We didn't see how he started, but it must have been with push assistance.
Yes, I would think that he will be disqualified for that, but that doesn't matter, because the important thing, he's out of the points on this occasion. The important thing for Johnny is that he gets experience and continues to do the lap. And Senna put a new lap record in on the previous lap and has now gone faster than Prost, and the gap remains at about 3 seconds on the road. And remember that Senna has something over 3 seconds already from the first part of the race before it was stopped. So Senna in an overall commanding lead of some 6.5 seconds.
Ayrton Senna has lapped everybody up to third position. Johnny Herbert has had a short pit stop to check his car over, but is back in the running. Ayrton Senna is very much in the running on his way to his 15th Grand Prix victory. You can see the gap now between himself and Alain Prost. Look for the second red and white car. It's getting closer all the time. With the new lap record by Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 27.314, which is 1.3 seconds faster than the previous lap record. And he's coming up to catch Warwick.
Yes, and Senna lost a couple of seconds on the last lap in traffic. And this would normally be a situation where you'd say that Prost might be able to take some advantage, but of course we know from last year that Senna has been by far the superior driver in dealing with the traffic, and if any one fact was the difference between winning and losing the championship in their head-to-head battle last year, it was that. The fact that Senna could get through the traffic much better, with much more bravery, and prepared to take more risks, with which he got away, than Alain Prost.
1.6 seconds, nevertheless, between Senna and Prost. Senna has broken clear. Prost is charging, but you can see where he is in the traffic. Ayrton Senna has got a clear lap in front of him, and Alain Prost has got one car, and it's that of Thierry Boutsen in front of him, then the Dallara, and then another one, which is Derek Warwick. So Ayrton Senna has definitely got the advantage.
And almost unnoticed in all the excitement, Jonathan Palmer, yet another gritty drive, has now moved up into 7th place and is therefore threatening to get amongst the points. Jonathan Palmer in what is not too competitive a Tyrrell car, sufficiently slow that Michele Alboreto in his Tyrrell missed qualifying for the race, and but despite that, Palmer is up into 7th place.
Yes, the interesting thing being that the car which Michele Alboreto failed to qualify and the car in which Jonathan Palmer is 7th are one and the same, because Alboreto tried to qualify the new 018 Tyrrell, failed to do so as a result of that, and incidentally we haven't seen Palmer on the screen yet, but as a result of what happened to Alboreto, they were able to work on the car, do a lot to it, and Palmer is driving absolutely magnificently. He hadn't driven the new 018 until the half-hour warm-up this morning. When he got in it, he said it is like chalk and cheese. This year's car, in terms of comfort and cockpit layout, is vastly superior to last year's, and the performance is exactly the same. Designed by Harvey Postlethwaite and ex-Ferrari aerodynamicist Jean-Francois Migeot. But there's the leader, and you can see that Prost is still bottled up. He hasn't got ahead of Boutsen, never mind Warwick.
Now this is very interesting to watch the Williams and McLaren and compare them for straight line speed. They certainly have got the impression that the Renault V10 is very powerful. We know there's nothing too much wrong with the Honda, and yet Prost was unable to reel Boutsen in on the straight then, despite the fact he was in the hole in the air, and he was unable to do Warwick either. So, but on power up the hill he's got him.
Yeah, and Boutsen has got ahead of Warwick. So, race order now. Ayrton Senna leads, Prost is in 2nd place, Nannini is in 3rd position, Boutsen up into 4th position ahead of Warwick 5th, and now Prost in 2nd place trying to catch Boutsen.
And once again, the traffic has really cost Alain Prost. He is now some 5 seconds behind Senna on the road, all of which he's lost courtesy of the traffic. He's finally broken clear, but it'll take him 6 or 7 laps going really charging just to get back to where he was a couple of laps ago in relation to Senna. So Senna's willingness to take a chance, dive for small gaps in the traffic, once again has really helped him.
And Senna has lapped everybody now up to Alessandro Nannini. This is a replay of the 1988 story, which we had 15 times out of 16 races. the one or other or both of the McLarens way ahead of the opposition. And as was the case in the majority of races, it is Senna leading Prost, notwithstanding the fact that Prost scored more World Championship points than Senna last year. He ended up second in the championship. And Prost now has got a clear circuit, so has Ayrton Senna. The race order on this, the 40th lap, remains Ayrton Senna leading, Prost there in second position, Nannini third, and the only man apart from Prost unlapped by Ayrton Senna in fourth position, Boutsen. Down to fifth position, Derek Warwick. In sixth position, marvellous in the points, Jonathan Palmer, because he's got ahead of Eddie Cheever, who is now seventh. Larini is in eighth position, and then it is, just checking, Andrea de Cesaris is in 10th place. And I missed Tarquini, I'm sorry. Tarquini is in 9th position, driving for his first race in the AGS. In this race, I have to remind you that we are going to end up having to sort out an extremely complicated aggregate position. Jonathan Palmer is in sixth position in this race. He is not in sixth position overall. I'm sorry to be confusing, but we have to refer back to the fact that there are two races to take account of. And certainly there is absolutely no doubt, as you see Johnny Herbert in the running there, followed by Eddie Cheever and Tarquini, that Ayrton Senna is leading. Alain Prost is 9.5 seconds behind him over the total distance that they have covered so far. But in this second leg, we are on lap 41. As you look at Eddie Cheever, that's Larini. We haven't seen much of Nicola Larini, but there he was, with Tarquini now ahead of him. It's a great pity that we haven't seen anything recently of Alessandro Nannini, because he's driving a fine race. He finished sixth in Brazil. There is Larini in the white Osella chasing the Dallara. So the attack, and really I would have thought flat spotting is right front there as he locked it up going into the Acqua Minerale, climbing out. And we're on lap 42 now, still Prost, still Senna, still Nannini in third position. In fourth position now, Thierry Boutsen, the only Williams-Renault running out of the two that started. In fifth position, Derek Warwick. In sixth position, Jonathan Palmer. In seventh position, Eddie Cheever. And then in eighth position, Tarquini, followed by ninth, Larini. And there are Cheever. And here is Larini.
And Prost has finally got the bit back between his teeth. He's settled down, he's clear of the traffic and is lapping quickly again. But I think now, quite honestly, he's given Ayrton Senna too big a start. In the overall position, he's some 9.4 seconds behind Senna. And that really is, I'm sure, too big a mountain to climb unless he can harrow Senna into a mistake. Remember, of course, that Senna doesn't even have to feel pressured by Prost, because even when Prost gets right behind him, he's still got 3.5 seconds on him. And I really think that the private McLaren battle looks pretty much settled, unless Prost can really pull something out. I saw something flapping on the arrows then. I'm not sure what it was. It didn't look too terminal. It was on the right-hand side of the car, but something was dangling and flapping.
And it's Eddie Cheever's car, who is being chased by Larini. So, race order, lap 43, no change at the first three, and...
Yes, and I was right, Prost is charging new lap record for Alain Prost. 1:26.8 approximately. But even consistent lap record breaking by Prost is only going to chip away at the a relatively comfortable lead that Senna has got.
Yes, Ayrton Senna is very definitely now commanding the race from the front on the 43rd lap in this 55-lap second leg. He's got a nearly 9-second lead on aggregate. He will be getting his pit signals and radio signals. Oh, Prost spins out! Alain Prost spins right out. Now, this is going to blow things wide open, but he manages to keep motoring. He had some momentum, kept the car going on the grass, and that was a masterly bit of thinking.
It's a very rare mistake. We don't often see Prosty spinning like that. And here, let's have a look at it again, but I don't think one can say anything but an error of concentration. Nothing appears wrong. He just turned in a bit sharply and failed to keep hold of the back of the car. And that surely has decided the result of the race. He kept the engine running, of course, very professionally, but that surely has decided the result of the race as far as the first two are concerned, because I don't think now that Prost will chase Senna even. I think he'll settle for second, which, of course, for the time being, will give him a lead in the championship of some 6 points.
Yes, and they're going out like flies at the present moment, because that is Louis Sala in the Minardi, and I think this is a replay of Prost coming up. Let's see as he goes into the left-hander. You'll see the back of the car step out.
Well, Mike Newton suggests to me that maybe Prost had a brake problem. That's certainly a possibility. The other thing, I see other people off the track, maybe there's a lot of oil suddenly gone down. But at the same time, Prost of all people, we'd expect to spot that sooner than most. So he gets away again, and in the meantime he's now some 15 seconds behind Senna in the race. Of course, Prost's second place is absolutely secure, so long as he has no mechanical problems or any more silly spins.
Well, Prost has got it going again. He got away well. It was lucky for him that it wasn't wet, because if that grass had been wet, even if he hadn't hit the wall as a result of increased momentum when he hit the grass, he would have certainly not been able to get the car going again. So Ayrton Senna now has well and truly got it made. There's the gap, 22 seconds now between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, with Alessandro Nannini still in third position, Thierry Boutsen still in fourth place, Derek Warwick in fifth position, and Jonathan Palmer in sixth place in this, I emphasize again, the second leg, and it's not necessarily going to end that way when they aggregate the first leg and the second. And there's the going off that you saw. It's Andrea de Cesaris, who is not unknown to television viewers in terms of leaving the course, having a little rally cross with the Minardi coming out of it worst, de Cesaris motoring serenely onwards. And he's come out of some really horrifying looking bangs in the past. Many of you remember that one of his in the Ligier, which went end over end over end, and he undid his seat belts, got out and walked back to the pits. And we are now on lap 45. Lap 46 we are on, 45 completed. Senna leading, Prost second, Nannini has been lapped. Only the two McLarens are going to go the full race distance. And one must say that this is an incredible testimony, not just to the strength of the administration and the organisation of the McLaren team and to the dominance of their two drivers, but to the fact that McLaren have produced as magnificent a chassis under the leadership this year of Neil Oakley, who has headed up the design team. He hasn't designed the car himself, it's a team effort, and the Honda engine, because this year it's a V10 3.5 litre normally aspirated engine that Honda have produced specially for this formula, and in this race it has been every bit as dominant as their 1.5 litre turbocharged V6 engine was last year. A lot of people after Brazil were saying that the dominance of McLaren had been broken by Ferrari. They overlooked the fact that Ayrton Senna, who is leading here and that we're looking at now, was taken out. Whether it was his fault or Berger's is debatable, but he was taken out on the first corner of the Brazilian Grand Prix and therefore didn't finish. And Alain Prost, who nevertheless finished second in Brazil, did so with a gearbox problem and a clutch problem, as a result of which he was only able to use one set of tyres. Now, while we watch Senna, let us not forget that when the race started, there was that appalling accident where Gerhard Berger slammed his Ferrari virtually head-on into the wall. It burst into flames. He is in hospital. He has burns to his face, arms and back. And as far as I know, apart from that, he is perfectly okay. And that is a merciful blessing. Needless to say, if we hear any more, we will let you know. But the news that we have of Gerhard Berger is good. And Senna leads, Prost second, and I would suspect that even Alain Prost, who is famous as being a fighter, there he is, will have given Senna best now.
Yes, it's clear actually from the lap times. I think that they've discussed it over the radio with their pit, and that the two McLarens are now no longer racing. They've declared it a result as far as they're concerned, because both McLaren drivers have slowed right down and are just running to the end now, and they'll keep formation.
Well, if you're keeping on top of this race situation and knowing that there are two races to consider, I can now give you some really marvellous news. It doesn't matter which race you're talking about, Jonathan Palmer is now in the points, because the redoubtable Dr. Jonathan Palmer is in 6th position in the new Tyrrell 018, which he had not even sat in until the half-hour warm-up this morning. And even if he goes no further, it would have been a terrific achievement.
Yes, and it's just typical of Jonathan. The car isn't competitive, it's all a struggle, and yet he fights, and he's a real tough little customer. He's immensely fit, very strong, and he gives 110% effort all the time, and it's a reward that he really deserves, and let's hope that the car will keep him going all the way to the finish.
Right, with no apologies for mentioning the British drivers, I will now give you the names and nationalities of the top 6. Ayrton Senna from Brazil is leading Alain Prost from France. In 3rd position is Alessandro Nannini, the Italian. In 4th position is Belgian Thierry Boutsen, ahead of the two Englishmen, Derek Warwick in 5th position and Jonathan Palmer. So Alex Caffey is going well, but not well enough, because Jonathan Palmer is ahead of him, and it looks now, if he can just keep it going a bit longer, as though he's going to finish there, because we're on lap 49. Race order, Senna has completed his 48th lap. We're still waiting for Alain Prost to go through. You're looking at the race leader, Ayrton Senna, as he's gone round the Tosa bend and climbing up towards the Piratella again. He is, I said, on his 49th lap. There is an enormously long and ever-increasing gap between him and Alain Prost. It's some 36 seconds now. So this quite incredible Brazilian, Ayrton Senna, has really got things in an iron grasp. McLaren Honda leads, McLaren Honda second. Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton Ford is in 3rd position, but has been lapped. And in 4th position behind him, Thierry Boutsen in the Williams Renault. In 5th position, it is Derek Warwick, and as I told you, in 6th place, it is Jonathan Palmer. 7th is Tarquini. In 8th position, it is Andrea De Cesaris. 9th is Larini. In 10th position, Eddie Cheever, who has dropped back a lot, of course. In 11th position, it is Alex Caffey. And there are only 11 runners now in very much the closing stages of the race. And we see now, for the first time for a long time, Alessandro Nannini, an Italian in Italy, who is in 3rd place. If he stays there, he's going to have finished in the points in the first two Grand Prix of 1989. Brazil, he was 6th, and he's showing every sign of finishing 3rd here in Italy at Imola in the San Marino Grand Prix.
And Jonathan Palmer still has work to do to secure points for 6th place, because although he's not close to Alex Caffey on the road, there is only some 3 seconds separating them in the aggregate times, and Caffey behind him in 7th place, and will, if he's being in form, will be fighting to try and get rid of those 3 seconds.
The only thing that Ayrton Senna has got to worry about now is that nothing goes wrong with the car or the engine. And since Honda brought 6 different engine configurations here to Imola to test for 8 days before official practicing even started, and selected the best one to give enough power and the best possible engine response, and we know that the chassis is good, it seems very unlikely that any trouble will strike him.
Yes, and I think I have to concur with Mike Doodson about Prost's problem, because it certainly looks as if he does have brake problems now. He's slowed right down. He's clearly not racing, but then of course he doesn't need to, because 2nd place for him is absolutely assured, so long as he can get the car to the line in one mechanical piece, which obviously is his main concern now.
Larini, by the way, who you haven't seen recently, is driving an Osella which is sounding very sick indeed. It's rumbling considerably as he goes past us. And so is Eddie Cheever. He sounds to me as though he's got some sort of an engine problem. But now, on the 51st lap in this 55-lap race, Senna leads Prost. Still a lap ahead of Alessandro Nannini in 3rd place. No change for 4th position. It's Thierry Boutsen. No change for 5th position, Derek Warwick, and no change for 6th position, who is Jonathan Palmer. Now you can see the McLaren there coming up to Johnny Herbert, race leader Ayrton Senna, coming up to Johnny Herbert, who had done so well earlier in the race before he spun off at the Tosa bend, and Martin Brundle, who had got back into the running again, is stopping as he goes past the main grandstand. He was way down in 12th position on aggregate, a long way behind, but now something terminal has happened. There he is, being pushed in, Martin Brundle being retired from the race with, I suspect, an engine problem from the way he stopped and the sound.
And the only real battle that's going on at the moment, although it's not a battle between the 2 drivers on the track, is the one between Palmer and Caffey, and in fact Caffey is very slightly closer to Jonathan Palmer's 6th place. He's now slightly under 3 seconds behind Jonathan Palmer.
Lap 52. Laps 53, 54 and 55 to go still in this 2nd leg, with Ayrton Senna very, very much in command on his way to his 14th +1 Grand Prix victory. 15, he's already had 14 second places and an amazing 257 points. 31 pole positions, only 2 less than the record set up by the great Jim Clark. This is very much today's driver. He's 29 years old. He's got an enormous amount of racing time ahead of him. René Arnoux, who incidentally failed to qualify in the very much better 1989 Ligier, is 40 years old. 11 years between Ayrton Senna and René Arnoux, and Senna can still go on for a long, long time, I would suspect, to rack up eventually more Grand Prix victories than anybody else. And at the present moment, that is Alain Prost, and that is Larini out of the race. Nicola Larini out of the Osella with the nose cone on the grass behind him. There's obviously been physical contact. The tyre off the left front wheel, and Larini, that is very, very hard luck, because the way he was going, he was challenging Jonathan Palmer for 6th place on aggregate, and Osella has hardly ever been in the points.
I thought I saw another car in the background there. Maybe he'd made contact with somebody else, but in the meantime, Caffey in 7th place behind Jonathan Palmer, and not very far behind him on aggregate, has obviously got the message from the pit because he's charging and he's chipping away at that gap, and last time they went past it was just over 2.5 seconds. So Jonathan not at all in a comfortable situation and has got to respond. And no, it didn't say another car, so that was Lorini's stricken motor, but apparently on its own. Now Palmer has just gone past us. We'll wait till Caffey goes past. Oh, and there's a replay, and maybe there was contact. And Caffey has actually dropped back a bit this time, so the gap back to nearly 3 seconds, which should be enough.
That was Nicola Larini. There could hardly be more contact, I suppose. He hit all 4 corners on the way round. And now, with the race leader on his 54th and last lap but one, ahead of Johnny Herbert, there is Ayrton Senna, well ahead of Prost. Unless something very dramatic happens in the closing stages of the race, it is going to be yet another first and second for McLaren, and there's nothing very significant about the fact that Herbert has passed Senna. There's no reason why Senna should fight. He's got a tremendous lead. He won't be wanting to do anything that is going to affect adversely his chance to win his 15th Grand Prix. He knows he's a long way ahead of Alain Prost. Nannini is still in 3rd position. Boutsen is still in 4th place. Warwick is still in 5th position, and Palmer is still in 6th place.
Yes, Prost has clearly decided discretion is the better part of valour, and with brake trouble that is not a bad decision at all. He slowed right down. There's nearly a minute behind Senna, but being well over a minute in front of Nannini, it's purely a matter of getting the car round to the finish line and doing everything you can to make sure it gets there. Senna also has slowed right down now. And the important bit is the battle for Jonathan Palmer is having with Caffey, although it's a stopwatch rather than a visual battle on the road. And in fact, Jonathan is now coming out ahead of that. He's increased the gap to over 4 seconds, which I suppose with just a couple of laps or a lap and a half to go, that makes it now comfortable. And Jonathan Palmer looks as if he'll be rewarded very deservedly with a point for 6th place.
And behind Jonathan Palmer, there's a battle going on which has been resolved at the moment to the advantage of Tarquini, who has passed Alex Caffey into 7th place. Gabriele Tarquini, in his first race for AGS, is running 7th ahead of Alex Caffey. Martin Brundle, we've had confirmation, has retired because of an engine problem, and Ayrton Senna is now on his last lap. So, in a race which started originally this afternoon with a terrible crash which might have been absolutely disastrous for Gerhard Berger, mercifully that turned out not to be so. The race was restarted after just 3 laps, as a result of which we're working on an aggregate situation. But Ayrton Senna is comfortably on his way to win his 15th Grand Prix. He won here in San-Marino at Imola last year, and he's going to win again and make it 2 in succession. He's almost within sight of the finishing flag now. The checkered flag is readied, and Ayrton Senna comes out of the last corner, crosses the line, raises his hand laconically, and there is the checkered flag.
Yes, once again, all too easy for McLarens, but a good battle between the 2 McLaren drivers until what we think appeared to be brake problems for Alain Prost, at which point he abdicated from the battle, settled for 2nd place. We just have to wait and see that he crosses the line. And a tremendous race by Jonathan Palmer, reward for perseverance.
And at the end of the San Marino Grand Prix, as Alain Prost comes through to finish in 2nd place, he leads the World Championship by 3 points ahead of Senna and Mansell, who tie for 2nd position, with Alessandro Nannini in 4th place in the World Championship. But quick confirmation that the San Marino Grand Prix has been won by Ayrton Senna from Alain Prost, his teammate. Alessandro Nannini in third position. In fourth position, Thierry Boutsen, and then Warwick and Palmer finishing fifth and sixth.
Andiamo al commento.
Sì, un Gran Premio ricco di emozioni, anche drammatiche, risolte fortunatamente. Non abbiamo le ultime notizie di Berger, però si pensa che stia abbastanza bene, quindi dicevo drammatiche. Una regia brillante oggi che ci ha riproposto tutto quello che è successo, anche, bisogna dirlo, consigliata bene da noi.
Sì, sì.
Quindi credo che i telespettatori hanno visto un Gran Premio molto interessante. La Ferrari oggi ha avuto una giornata nera, credo una giornata da dimenticare, bisogna ritornare in fabbrica, rimboccarsi le maniche, raccogliere un po' tutti i cocci che sono rimasti e pensare immediatamente a Monte Carlo e a cercare di rimettere, vedere un po' quali che sono le condizioni di Berger. La McLaren ormai non c'è più niente da dire, oggi forse stuzzicata, un po' pungolata a Rio, oggi veramente ha dimostrato tutta la potenza della squadra e del mezzo, quindi ha stravinto, ha vinto veramente alla grande, primo e secondo si riporta in vetta al campionato, però dietro bisogna dire che quindi la Ferrari è vicina, bisogna parlare anche dei piloti italiani. Nannini prima di tutto, che ha portato a casa un terzo posto con la vecchia Benetton in attesa della nuova vettura, e poi Riccardo Patrese anche oggi sfortunato, però ha a disposizione un mezzo valido e lo vedremo sicuramente più competitivo e più avanti nella classifica finale nei prossimi Gran Premi. Poi